Discover 8 spine-chilling sinister encounters hidden in Appalachia's cursed cabins. Fear files. The wind howled through the trees like a banshee, twisted branches reaching for Sarah as the sun set behind the Appalachian foothills. She and her teenage son, Jake, stood before the decrepit cabin their estranged relative had left them. Moss-choked walls leaned inward like weary shoulders, whispering secrets of the woods. The air felt heavy, thick like fog, smothering their spirits. Chills danced down Sarah's spine as she recalled the warnings she had brushed off. The eerie folklore surrounding the cabin gnawed at her like a hungry beast. At first, the small town nearby welcomed them with open arms, smiles that felt genuine. Yet, a tension lurked beneath the surface, an uneasy something that made Sarah's skin crawl. Adults exchanged fearful glances, while children giggled nervously, casting wary stares toward the shadows of trees that loomed like sentinels. As days passed, the forest sounds morphed into sinister whispers, echoes of sorrow swelling into the night. Jake, once a bright spark filled with laughter, began drifting into a world of unsettling visions. At first, he whispered fantastical tales of shadowy figures in the woods, but then came the sense of decay and damp earth that clung to him like an unwelcome embrace. "Mom, you have to listen." Jake's eyes were wild one evening, a frantic dance as he described a little girl in white, lost and weeping. "She's trying to tell me something." Panic gripped Sarah's heart as she tried to brush his worries aside. Then Mrs. Klein, their neighbor, appeared with grave warnings. "That cabin, it's cursed," she whispered, her voice trembling as if just the mention of it summoned malevolent forces. "Cursed?" Sarah scoffed, her voice masking her growing unease. But flickering lights and creaking floors became the norm, as if the very structure of their new home was fighting against them. Shadows stretched in the corners, twisting through the air. She caught a glimpse of distant movements between the trees, deepening gnawing fears. One night, soft sobs carried on the wind sent bolt after bolt of ice through her veins. Was it the little girl from Jake's visions, or something much darker? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Desperation consumed Sarah, and she sought the town's elderly historian. A quivering hand pointed to family names that echoed like thunderclaps in her ears. They vanished. One after another, related to the cabin, leaving nothing but dread behind. Trust shattered like fragile glass, friendly faces turned sinister. Jake wasn't just seeing things, he was becoming something. His laughter warped into chants, foreign words spilling from his lips. The walls constricted around them, shadows curving closer. As she raced through the woods, breathless, fingers brushing against bark, the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on her. The neighbors she once smiled at morphed into looming figures, waiting for their moment to pounce. Terrors of the forest wrapped around her mind, igniting her fears. What had they inherited? Old shadows mingled with fresh ones. The line between safety and danger blurred. She felt it, something lurking, biding its time. In the heart of the night, Sarah clutched the realization that the cabin was only the beginning. She had to find Jake, to fight back against a darkness that had always been waiting for them. Who could she trust when even the ground below felt cursed? The moon hung low, a pale eye watching as Sarah retraced her steps, breathless with terror. The weight of her fears threatened to pull her into the ground beneath her. Shadows danced around, taunting her, figures flickering at the edge of her vision, just beyond the realm of reality. She could still hear Jake's voice, soft yet urgent, filling her thoughts like poison. "Mom, help." She's here. How had it come to this? She had debated turning around, leaving the cabin behind, but that was impossible now. Deep down, she felt the pull of the dark roots binding her family to this cursed ground. She had to find Jake, to unravel this nightmarish web before it consumed them both. The woods whispered secrets, taunting, begging. She pressed on, limbs brushing past the gnarled branches, each one a finger clawing at her clothes, at her skin. The sobs still echoed, a desperate lullaby drawing her deeper into the forest. She followed the sound, heart pounding, the reality of her son's state looming over her. A clearing appeared suddenly, moonlight illuminating an altar of twisted roots and decaying foliage. At its center stood Jake, entranced. His back was turned to her. "Jake!" She shouted, but the sound swallowed by the oppressive night. He didn't move. Instead, he raised his arms, his head tilted back as if responding to something only he could see. The air turned icy, and a figure materialized beside him, a ghostly child in white, hair trailing like mist. A vision from Jake's tales, now all too real. The girl pointed towards the trees, her mouth moving in silent pleas. Fear gripped Sarah, and she felt dizzy, nausea twisting her stomach as the world around her vibrated. "Jake, please!" she cried, rushing forward, panic coursing through her veins. He turned slowly, eyes wide and glazed, the depths of his gaze void of the boy she knew. Instead, something vile stirred within him. She felt the shadows converge, thick and suffocating, wrapping around her. "Mom, I need to," his voice faltered. "I can help her, no." Sarah's voice broke as she closed the distance. "You need to come back. This isn't what you think. It's dangerous." But it was too late. The ground trembled beneath her feet. The trees groaned, swaying ominously, as if responding to an ancient call. The little girl's form flickered in and out, her face a mask of sorrow and anger. With every heartbeat, Sarah felt the forest pressing in, the darkness hungry for the light. "Leave him alone!" she shouted at the apparition, rage fueling her defiance. The response was swift. The shadows lunged towards her, a collection of clawed hands and chilling whispers. She stumbled back, heart racing, and for a fleeting moment, she grasped the fragments of a memory, her childhood tales about the forest's cursed kin, those lured to the shadows, never to return. "Jake!" She lunged for him as he staggered, lost between the realm of the living and those who lingered just out of sight. But the shadows were closing in, an encroaching wave of despair. The girl's face twisted with malice, her eyes black and hollows. "Help me," she whispered, the plea resonating coldly within Sarah's chest. A choice lay before her. Save Jake or confront the darkness head-on. As she drew closer, the shadows writhed, clawing at her ankles like starving wolves. She took a deep breath. "I'm here, Jake. Come back to me." Just as she reached for him, the girl lunged forward, vanishing into the night. Jake's scream shattered the silence, piercing her heart with an icy dagger of fear. Everything went black as the world fell away, swallowed by the haunting cries of the lost. And the silence that followed, questions lingered like a cold fog. What had she awakened? What price would she have to pay to save her son? As the wind howled, Sarah felt a terrible certainty settle in her mind. This was only the beginning. But the true horror lay ahead, as the whispers of forgotten souls began to echo around her. Would she find a way to confront the darkness, or would they both become another chapter in the cabin's cursed legacy? The world reassembled slowly around her, yet every sound twisted like a blade in her mind. The chilling wind seemed to weave together the cries from the shadows and echo them into Sarah's ears. She blinked, desperate to gather her thoughts, but the clearing had morphed, becoming an oppressive cavern of darkness. "Jake?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Panic clawed at her throat. Memories swirled, fragments of shattered moments where laughter and light filled their lives. Now, only dread stretched around her like a suffocating blanket. She steadied herself, each breath a labor. The shadows encircled her, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. Then, a flicker caught her eye. A small shape danced among the trees, a flash of white against the black. The girl. "Jake!" Sarah shouted again, urgency pouring from her lips. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to tune out the whispers. If she could just find him. The air shifted, growing colder, and the shadows recoiled slightly, as if sensing her determination. With each step, she fought against an overwhelming pull that sought to drag her deeper into the dark underbelly of the forest. The trees loomed like ancient giants, their gnarled roots creeping across the forest floor, exposing the danger concealed beneath the surface. She caught glimpses of the girl through the branches, her small figure darting unexpectedly, beckoning Sarah to follow. The urge to flee battled with the need to reach her son. If she turned away now, she might lose Jake forever. Suddenly, Jake's voice broke through the cacophony of the night. "Mom! I can't." It sounded distant yet alarmingly close. A jolt of hope ignited her resolve, pushing her forward through the maze of shadows. Thorns snagged at her clothes, pulling her back, each sharp tug a reminder of the unseen dangers lurking just beyond her grasp. "No!" she gasped, wrenching herself free. The forest seemed to shudder, the shadows writhing at her feet, hissing in anger. "Help me!" The girl's voice, no longer a whisper, but a terrible plea, resonated in the back of her mind. What did this lost soul want? This was not just a specter, it felt all too real. The air crackled with each breath, heavy with desperation. "Jake!" she cried, voice breaking. The shadows writhed, forming a barrier around her, a wall of darkness that pulsed like a living pulse. Then, an agonizing scream rang out, tearing through the silence like a knife. "Mom! Help!" It was Jake, unmistakable and filled with dread. The sound ignited a wildfire of terror in her chest. She charged forward, ignoring the sharp pains that raced through her limbs. She burst into another clearing, heart hammering. Dim moonlight illuminated a grotesque scene. Jake stood, visibly fraying at the edges, while the ghostly girl circled him, her arms outstretched, fingers curling like claws. "No!" Sarah's scream fractured the night, and she lunged between them, desperate to shield Jake from whatever dark fate awaited him. As she moved, a frost enveloped her, freezing her in place just as she reached the edge of the light. The girl's gaze fixed on her, eyes like bottomless pits, devoid of anything human. "Help us!" the girl hissed, and Sarah felt the pull of the girl's sorrow envelop her too, as if the shadows were weaving a noose around her heart. Suddenly, the ground quaked beneath them. The shadows surged, hungry and alive, hungry for flesh and fear. Sarah grasped Jake's arm with a newfound urgency. "Fight it! Come back to me!" But in that moment, a blinding flash split the night, revealing figures lurking behind the trees, whispering shadows in human shape. Their faces contorted in anguish, twisted souls who had lost everything. "Join us!" their voices chorused in unison, each note laden with despair. The darkness closed in around them, threatening to claim them as the girl's expression warped into a smile of victory. "Choose!" she cried, the last shred of innocence gone. Unsure and trembling, Sarah looked to Jake, both terrified and resolute. The weight of the past, of the forest's curse, settled heavily over them. This was no mere battle, it was a war of wills. Would they succumb to the shadows, or could they find a way out before it was too late? As the world twisted around them, more questions rose in the air unanswered, waiting. What if the darkness had already planted its roots too deep? What if hope was just another illusion to extinguish? The air was thick with dread, closing in as the figures loomed closer, their whispers a haunting lullaby that echoed through the trees. "Join us!" they said it like a promise, but it hung heavy like a curse over Sarah and Jake. The shadows darkened, swirling like smoke, choking off the light. "Mom!" Jake's voice was fading, each syllable a tether slipping away. She gripped his arm tighter, her pulse racing, the warmth of his flesh a fragile line of hope. "No! You're not leaving me!" The girl's laughter bounced off the tree trunks, a sickening sound that sent ice down her spine. She hadn't just been lost, she was twisted by whatever evil thrived in these woods. "Help us!" she repeated, but the plea felt like a taunt. The ground trembled beneath them, sending waves of cold surging through Sarah's legs. "Stay close," she commanded, trying to steer Jake towards the last remnants of light, but the shadows whispered their secrets, twisting truth with lies. They were no longer alone, the grotesque figures were all around them, their hollow eyes reflecting a world that had forgotten hope. The girl stepped forward, no longer circling but standing inches from Sarah. "You want him back? That's the price." A flicker of uncertainty flashed through Sarah. What did she have to sacrifice? The thought quivered through her mind, battling against the maternal instinct to shield her son at all costs. But Jake's terrified face reminded her of what was truly at stake. Time was slipping away. "Please. Stop this," she shouted, her voice breaking as the fear clawed at her throat. She felt the weight of the forest pressing down, the dread creeping into her bones. Just a few breaths earlier, she had felt like she was in control, but now she was fighting against an abyss pulling her under, yet, through the darkness, a glimmer of resolve sparked inside her. "You don't get to have him," she screamed. There was magic in that power, a surge of will that pushed against the encroaching shadows. She pulled Jake closer, their hearts beating wildly in sync. "What will you give?" The girl's voice hissed, her eyes shimmering with a darkness deeper than the void surrounding them. "You must choose, or both will be mine." The shadow figures closed in, their forms shifting like liquid night. Horrific faces twisted in pain, showing glimpses of the lives they had lost. The torment in their features reflected her deepest fears of loss, of a future snatched away. "Fight it," Sarah urged Jake, using every ounce of strength, every remnant of hope to keep him from despair. "They can't take us." Jake's eyes searched hers, fear transforming into determination. "What do we do?" "Trust me," she barked, trying to hold on to the last thread of clarity. She placed both hands on his face, feeling the warmth radiating from him, a flame in the consuming cold. "We have to believe we can break this." Suddenly, the forest erupted in a cacophony of screams, the figures roaring in rage. The shadows began to flicker and fade in response to her fervent declaration, like a fire beginning to banish the night. "No. You can't." A surge of adrenaline powered through them, igniting a beam of blinding light that pierced the thick darkness. The figures shrieked in agony, retreating like cockroaches from the dawn. But as the brightness intensified, the girl stepped back, a sly grin transforming her once innocent face. "This isn't over." With a final, defiant roar, the figures collapsed into the earth, the shadows dissipating like mist under a rising sun. The eerie silence that followed felt almost too quiet, a deceptive calm that wrapped around them like a shroud, but Sarah knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The darkness would return. She could almost hear its whispered promises curling through the trees, seeking the cracks they had yet to mend. "We need to go," she urged, the urgency returning to her voice. "Now." As they turned to run, a chill swept through her body, the ominous sensation of eyes watching them. Instinctively, she glanced back. The girl had vanished, but Sarah felt the weight of her presence looming like a storm. "Mom, what just happened?" Jake's voice quivered, filled with confusion and fear. "I don't know," she replied breathlessly, a knot tightening in her stomach. "But we need to be ready. It's not over yet." As they plunged deeper into the night, every rustle in the bushes ignited a fresh wave of dread. Somewhere behind them, a soft laughter echoed, a reminder that the darkness was still hunting. What other horrors awaited them in the depth of the woods? What more would they need to sacrifice to reclaim their lives? The forest felt alive, breathing around them, an unseen predator stalking its prey. Sarah tightened her grip on Jake's arm, the pounding of her heart echoing in her ears, drowning out the whispers that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The laughter of the girl reverberated, wrapping around them like a noose. Were they truly free, or had they merely retreated into a darker corner of their fate? "Stay close," she barked, urgency slicing through the panic. The path ahead was uncertain, swallowed by shadows that thickened yet again as if the trees conspired to hide their escape. Every step felt like she was walking deeper into the belly of a beast, each crack of a twig beneath their feet amplifying the suffocating tension. "We can't stop," Jake gasped. Fear danced in his wide eyes, glancing at every rustle in the underbrush. Sarah felt his grip on her loosen slightly, she could sense his resolve waning. Just ahead, the trees began to part slightly, revealing a narrow clearing bathed in moonlight. Relief surged through her blood, but it was short-lived. The chill in the air felt different now, sentient, hungry. Before they stepped fully into the light, Sarah hesitated, her instinct screaming at her to stay back. "Mom?" Jake's voice cracked, pulling her from her thoughts. "What's wrong? Do you feel that?" She whispered, scanning the woods that felt too quiet, as if they were holding their breath. The shadows flitted at the edges of the clearing, darting in and out as if deciding whether to pounce. Then, from the depths of the underbrush emerged another figure, a woman, gaunt with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes, her mouth twisting in a grotesque smile that promised nothing but madness. "You've come to join us," she crooned, swaying like a willow in the breeze. "We've been waiting." Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't just another lost soul, this was something infinitely worse, something tethered to the wildly twisted fabric of these woods. The woman extended a skeletal hand, beckoning. "You can't leave. Not yet. There's still a bargain to be made. Get back." Sarah shouted, stepping in front of Jake, needing to protect him from this new horror. But the shadows were thickening again, creeping like predators. "Join us," the woman sang, her voice echoing, intertwining with the persistent laughter lurking in the dark. "Mom!" Jake's grip tightened, his breathing quickening, panicked. "Run!" Sarah snapped, eyes wide as she pulled him into a sprint, adrenaline pumping like a wild animal inside her. They barreled into the clearing, the moonlight spilling over them, illuminating the grotesque decorum of the scattered remnants of lives long past, broken toys, rusted tools, moldering clothes. Each item testified to souls lost in the curse of the woods. "What is this place?" Jake panted, stumbling slightly. "I don't know," she cried, her mind racing. She was desperate to understand yet terrified of knowing. Ahead, the trees stood like silent sentinels, no warmth left in their twisted trunks. Then, the laughter erupted again, this time closer, a chorus of voices grating and delighted. "You can't escape. It's all part of the game." Out of the corner of her eye, Sarah saw more figures emerging from behind the trees, all genders, all ages, their eyes gleaming with the same cursed light. They began to move, their bodies swaying in unison, an unsettling dance that sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. "No, we will fight," she whispered fiercely, despite her heart hammering in protest. They had to break through this web of madness. Frozen in place, Sarah's mind churned through options, calculating odds like a trapped animal. But the figures were closing in, their disjointed steps thrumming against the ground, a deadly rhythm. "Mom!" Jake screamed, pulling on her arm. The weight of fear rumored through their surroundings. Then, against the rising tide of malice, Sarah felt a flicker of something, an idea, however weak. "We need to find something, anything that can break this," she shouted, searching the ground frantically. But the shadows were relentless, pushing ever closer. They had to act fast. In desperation, she gripped Jake's hand tighter, heart racing. "Trust me." Her resolve solidified. "We'll find a way out. We just need to keep moving." Just then, a figure from the shadows hissed, "Where do you think you're going?" The voice was as cold and sharp as shattered glass. And then, out of the darkness came a whispered promise. The words shivered through the air, "You will belong to us, or you will never leave." But Sarah barely heard. With a sudden breakthrough of rage and fear, the flickering light surrounding them began to pulse again, a glimmer of hope flaring against despair. "Jake, we can't stop," she urged, her breath quickening. We need to believe we can fight this. Tension coiled in the air like a tightly wound spring about to snap. The shadowy figures surged forward, laughter erupting in a jagged cacophony. What would they need to sacrifice this time to break free? As darkness rushed to engulf them, a single chilling question pierced through the chaos: what would they become if they chose to surrender? A sudden wave of dread washed over them, crashing into Sarah as if the forest itself had achieved sentience. The phantom laughter twisted into a mocking symphony, a cruel serenade echoing through the trees. Shadows leapt forward, a relentless tide that pulled Jake and Sarah toward the heart of terror. Keep running! Sarah screamed, forcing her legs to pump faster, each stride fueled by desperation. But Jake lagged, energy flagging. The moonlight vanished behind thickening clouds overhead, plunging them into murky darkness. The branches waved like skeletal fingers, reaching for them, threatening to snag and snare. They're right behind us. Jake gasped, stumbling over exposed roots. Don't look back. Sarah's voice was raw, almost a growl. The air crackled with malevolence, every breath tasted tainted, like the horror was seeping into her veins. She could hear the whispers crescendoing, weaving their tales of past victims, begging them to join in their eternal misery. With her heart thundering painfully in her chest, Sarah scanned the terrain. A flash of movement caught her eye, a glimmer of silver amongst the dark. She yanked Jake toward it, not daring to think why they would dare move toward something that could either offer help or become yet another snare. Here! She shouted, and they skidded to a stop in front of an old, decrepit cabin. Its wooden slats leaned awkwardly, windows clouded with dust and despair. The roof sagged as if pressed down by grief, every inch of it a testament to the darkness that dwelled within. "Mom, we can't hide in there," Jake protested, eyes wide with panic. "We don't have a choice." She could feel the figures closing in, the warmth of blood pumping through her turning cold with fear. "We need to find something, anything." With a heaving breath, Sarah pushed the door, its creaking protest almost musical amidst the chaos outside. Darkness swallowed them whole as they stepped inside, the air stale and thick with the scent of decay and neglected memories. Inside, time seemed to slip away. Dust hung suspended in the air like lost souls, and shadows danced on the walls, reminiscent of those they had fled from. Broken furniture cluttered the room, each scattered item a relic of previous lives, swallowed whole by the forest's insatiable appetite. "Look!" Jake pointed at a small, ornate box perched on a rickety table. It was covered in intricate carvings of faces twisted in agony and despair. "What is it?" "I don't know, but we need to hurry." Sarah rushed forward, her hands shaking as she picked up the box. Immediately, a pulse of energy surged through her, cold and electrifying, hitting her like a shockwave. The carving seemed to come alive, the faces shifting, their mouths opening in silent screams. A voice echoed from within, a dark invitation: "Release us and they shall set you free, Mom, please." "We can't trust it." Jake's voice trembled, but Sarah was entranced, unable to look away from the box, its surface slick with dread. "No, Jake, we have to see." Suddenly, the door shuddered violently, a thundering bang that reverberated through the cabin as if something was trying to break in. The shadows outside swirled, morphing into elongated figures pressing against the glass like desperate souls eager for revenge. "Run!" Jake yelled, his instincts igniting a fire of survival within him. But Sarah hesitated, torn between the sinister whispers unleashed from the box and the merciless promises lurking outside. The laughter grew feral, piercing through her skull, an unspoken threat: "You're ours." In an instant of fear and instinct, she hurled the box against the wall. It shattered anew, a burst of light exploding, swirling the cabin in chaotic brilliance. The faces twisted into a chorus of wails, pleading and furious, merging with the laughter from the outside. With no choice left, she grasped Jake's hand and dashed for the back door, not looking back. Outside, the darkness pressed in, hungry and relentless. "Mom, what have we done?" Jake gasped, fear-laden, but Sarah could only run, the laughter echoing, now mixed with cries of rage. The forest seemed to breathe around them, a living entity, and as they sprinted deeper into its heart, a new question loomed large, flooding her with dread. What had they unleashed in their desperate flight for freedom? Behind them, a whisper slithered through the trees, "You can't escape what you've awakened." Branches tore at their clothes as they ran, a relentless grip pulling them back as if the forest itself resisted their flight. Shadows danced in their peripheral vision, lingering just out of sight, as if waiting for the moment to strike. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat, her feet pounding against the forest floor, the thud in her ears barely drowning out the frenzy of laughter that followed. "We need to find shelter," Jake gasped, choking on fear. "Somewhere safe from them." The darkness pressed in around them like an inescapable trap. Twisted roots snagged their feet, and every desperate breath felt like inhaling the very essence of dread. Jake stumbled, and Sarah spun to catch him, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We can't stop now. Keep moving." Ahead, a soft glow flickered. It was faint, but something drew her in, a promise or perhaps another layer of the trap. When they broke through the trees, they found themselves in a clearing where an ancient well stood silent, its stonework covered in vines. Dim light radiated from the depths, illuminating faintly. "Mom, don't." Jake's voice was a frantic plea. "What if I can't help it? There's something I need to see." Sarah stepped closer, the air trembling as the glow pulsed. The whispers followed her, curling around her like smoke, enticing her, making her feel as if she belonged. Peering into the well, she squinted against the brightness that emanated from below, forming shadowy shapes that twisted impossibly. Faces hovered at the edge between light and darkness, silent, expectant. Each one seemed to cry out for her. "Help us, help us." Jake pulled at her arm, panic in his eyes. "We have to go. Please." But Sarah was entranced, lost within the siren call of those trapped. Images flickered in the glow, children lost to the forest, families found too late, their edges frayed, their pleas rasping against her soul. "No." Jake yanked her back, breaking the spell. "We can't. They're not what they seem." Sarah stepped back, trembling. "What if they could help us?" "What do we?" A heavy shadow loomed behind them. A guttural growl cut through the cacophony of whispers, freezing Sarah's heart. The air shifted, tangy and thick with malice as something massive prowled on the outskirts of their fearful sanctuary. "We have to run." Jake hissed, eyes wide, terror flooding his face. "No, wait." Sarah panicked, her thoughts a chaotic swirl. "If we run, we could lead it back to the cabin. Or to others." But the growl deepened, primal and raw. The glow from the well pulsed again, as if becoming aware of the approaching threat. The voices morphed into a frenzied clamor, urging her to decide. "Release us. Let us out." They begged, a chorus of agony as the ground beneath them trembled, the ancient well vibrating with life. The figures in the light beckoned, desperation mingling with menace. She could feel the tension around them erupting with palpable energy, a decision looming between salvation and damnation. Before she could even ponder the implications, a dark figure burst into the clearing, a massive, twisted silhouette that defied nature. It darted forward, snapping its jaws just inches from Jake's shoulders. "Run!" Sarah screamed, instinct taking over. They sprinted back into the sheltering trees, adrenaline surging with every ounce of fear in their being. As they maneuvered through trembling limbs, the laughter they once feared echoed alongside them, mingling with the sounds of pursuit. Suddenly, Sarah remembered the box. They had shattered it. Had it unleashed something they could never contain? Jake was ahead, frustration boiling over, voice trembling. "What did we wake up? What if the worst is still to come?" Sarah's heart raced, the weight of dread returning. An unseen darkness shadowed them now, clawing at their resolve. "We have to find a solution, Jake. Maybe the well, maybe they can help." But as they dashed deeper into the forest, another laugh cut through the trees, sinister and mocking. A promise lingered on the breeze. What if they're already here? The chilling thought settled in her mind. What if escaping? The grasp of the forest only meant running straight into the hands of something much worse? Branches scratched at their faces as they plunged deeper into the suffocating darkness. Every snap of a twig beneath their feet echoed ominously, each sound amplifying their dread. The laughter, the disembodied, cruel laughter, followed them like a sinister shadow. What if it's just a trick? Jake panted, struggling to keep pace. His breath came out in quick bursts, like his heart pounding against his chest. What if we come across them? Whatever they are. A dim light glowed intermittently through the trees, ghostly and far too enticing. Sarah hesitated, torn between instinct and the growing curiosity that tugged at her. We can't just keep running. She shouted, urgency rising in her voice. We should face whatever this is. But Jake's eyes darted around, wild with panic. You've lost it. We need to hide, not confront. That well, maybe they want us to hide. She interrupted, grabbing his arm. What if they're counting on it? We have to take control. The glow flickered again, bathing them in eerie light. The shadows around them rippled with movement, dancing to an unseen rhythm. Anxiety knotted tight in her stomach. The well might have answers. No. The ferocity in Jake's voice startled her. It's a trap. You heard the whispers. But her feet betrayed her. Against all reason, Sarah started walking toward the light, drawn as if by invisible strings. As they approached, the forest seemed to whisper, the trees leaning in, watching with unblinking anticipation. It's just a well, she said softly, not quite convincing herself. The whispers beckoned again, softer now, a melody of hope laced with something darker. Maybe they're waiting for a way out too. Jake grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. Stop. Just please listen to me. His voice trembled, raw with fear. This could be worse than just running. What if we're meant to be here? What if we're part of it? He was right. She could feel that twisted sense of inevitability wrapping around her mind. A dawning realization crashed down like the weight of the world. They want to use us, she whispered in horror. Before she could pull away completely, the air thickened. Out of the depths of the well, tendrils of darkness reached upward, curling like fingers grasping for life. Sarah's heart raced as shadows morphed into faces, some familiar, others grotesque, silent screams etched in their features. The glow intensified, warping their expressions into torment. As a wave of nausea swept over her, a sudden rumble shuddered through the ground. It felt alive, as if the forest itself was awakening, restless and hungry. The laughter surged again, provoking a primal fear deep within. Run! She screamed, breaking away from Jake's grip. Run now! But the decision to flee was made too late. From the trees emerged shapes, neither fully formed nor entirely absent. They blurred in and out of existence, a chaotic blend of nightmare. One lunged forward, revealing gleaming eyes full of malice, breath steaming in the chilled air. Sarah! Jake yelled, terror fueling his voice as he dashed to her side, grasping her wrist. We can't! Before he could finish, the ground shuddered violently, and an anguished wail erupted around them. The forest echoed with a cacophony of cries, 1,000 lost souls reaching for something that remained hopelessly out of their grasp. They darted off the path, stumbling through the underbrush, heartbeats hammering like thunder in their ears. The laughter grew closer, more insistent, crescendoing into a sinister chorus filled with promises of despair. I don't want to be part of this. Sarah was screaming, her voice lost in the madness. Just then, a blinding flash erupted from the well, illuminating everything for a heartbeat. In its brilliance, she saw Jake's face frozen in horror turn toward her, an unspoken warning shattering the silence. Then, darkness enveloped them once more. It felt as if the shadows themselves conspired against them, a relentless pursuit blending terror and confusion. As they stumbled forward, desperate to escape, an icy breeze swept past them, whispering words that felt all too familiar. Help fingers clawed through the dark, tracing trails of despair, seeking warmth. Who were they? Why were they calling? Sarah's mind spiraled, confusion overtaking her as she questioned whether the forest truly held answers or if it was a curse. What if escaping the forest only placed them into a deeper nightmare? And as they raced away, the looming question echoed in her mind: what if they were never meant to escape at all? They ran, branches slicing their arms, the forest closing in like a noose. Each step echoed against an unseen clock, counting down to something unnameable. The laughter twisted into a relentless symphony, mocking their flight. It dripped with malice, echoing off the trees as if the very air conspired against them. Where do we go? Jake shouted, panic threading through his voice. His breath came in ragged bursts, and Sarah could sense his resolve starting to unravel. Just anywhere but here. She gasped, dragging him through the undergrowth. She could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes, watching, waiting. Shadows shifted around them, merging with the darkness, as if bewildered by their escape. They crashed through a clearing, and Sarah immediately felt exposed, vulnerable. The oppressive trees seemed to loiter at the edge, their gnarled branches reaching out like claws. Ahead lay remnants of an old cabin, its wooden beams warped and splintered, a silent invitation steeped in foreboding. Is that a shelter? Jake's voice trembled. The idea of hiding was appealing, yet it reeked of desperation. Maybe it can help us. She caught her breath, glancing back toward the forest. The laughter faded momentarily, only to blaze back to life, louder than before. Or it can trap us. Jake countered, still pulling her in the opposite direction, but then a series of anguished screams tugged at them, the sound ricocheting like an arrow shot straight into her chest. What are we even running from? Before she could respond, the ground underfoot trembled again, and something shot out from the shadows, dark, slithering tendrils that whipped around them, jagged claws scraping at their legs. Sarah barely had time to react as Jake yanked her towards the cabin. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of decay and old wood. Moonlight barely pierced through the cracks in walls, illuminating dusty remnants of past lives. As they stumbled in, Sarah slammed the door shut, breaths coming in rapid spurts. What if it follows us? Jake gasped, his body shaking as he pressed against the door. We need to block it, she insisted, glancing around for something heavy. The cabin sat quiet, oppressive shadows swirling around them. Then, above them, a floorboard creaked. Something stirred. Sarah's heart dropped like a stone. They weren't alone. We can't stay here. Jake was panicking now, his eyes darting toward the darkness that loomed above. Before she could speak, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs, partially obscured. It hovered, shrouded in a dense shadow, its outline twisting grotesquely. The figure lingered in the half-light, and an icy sensation wrapped around her heart, freezing her lungs. It slowly raised a hand, pointing at their huddled form. Help! The voice echoed, hollow and broken, a chilling mimicry of the ones they had heard in the forest. Sarah's mind raced. What do we do? She felt trapped between what she knew and what she feared. It wants us to come closer, Jake whispered, shaking his head violently, as if shaking off some unseen weight pressing down on him. We can't fall for that again. Maybe she started, but the room filled with a sudden, piercing shriek. It tore through the silence like a blade, rivulating through the walls. The shadows darkened, thickening into a suffocating haze. Get behind me! Jake shouted. He stepped past her, instinct overriding fear, and for a split second, she felt a flicker of hope. But with the shriek came a wave of despair flooding the room. The thing above them stepped closer, revealing a face that twisted her stomach, a melding of familiarity and horror. Join us, it whispered, voice coated in the echoes of the damned. As the darkness reached for them, an irresistible force pooled in her chest, tugging at something buried deep within. Run! She screamed, shoving Jake towards the doorway, but she already felt the tendrils closing in. They had to escape. She had to fight the pull of the shadows. But as the whispers grew louder, the question gnawed at her mind: what if there was no way out after all? The realization hit just as the shadows surged forward, grasping, pulling. And then darkness enveloped them once again, leaving nothing but echoes behind. What awaited them when the darkness finally released its grip? The darkness released its hold slowly, like a drowning sailor surfacing for air. Sarah blinked, gasping as she surveyed her surroundings. They were on the forest floor, the ethereal moonlight shimmering through the canopy above like a fragile promise. She could feel wet leaves beneath her fingers and the cool air biting at her neck, a stark contrast to the suffocating dread they'd just escaped. But something wasn't right. "Jake!" she called, voice trembling as she frantically scanned their surroundings. Panic bubbled up her throat when she saw him lying a few feet away, limp and cold. "Jake! Wake up!" She scrambled to him, shaking his shoulders, heart racing with terror. He stirred slightly, eyes fluttering open, confusion mixing with fear. "Mom? What happened?" His voice was frail, edged with exhaustion. "I don't know, but we're still in danger," she said, glancing over her shoulder. The sound of low whispers drifted through the trees, growing more ominous with each breath. "We have to get up." They stood unsteadily, Jake still dazed, but Sarah felt the pull of urgency settle within her, a dark force stalking too close for comfort. They had to act fast. "There," she pointed, spotting the remains of an old stone wall jutting from a thicket nearby. "That might give us some cover." They moved quickly, the whispers blending into a chaotic symphony around them, weaving through the trees like smoke. Something sinister lurked just beyond their line of sight. The very essence of the forest seemed to shift, alive with hungry anticipation. As they ducked behind the ruined wall, they caught their breath. "Are we safe?" Jake's voice quivered, stealing her resolve momentarily. "For now. But we can't stay here long," she replied, scanning the shadows ahead. "Whatever we awakened, it's still hunting for us." The forest breathed around them, thick and heavy. A sharp bark from above drew their eyes to a crow perched high overhead, watching. It cawed, and in that sound lay a warning. It felt like an omen, a gust of wind brushing through the trees carrying something more menacing than the mere rustling of leaves. Suddenly, a cold wind swept in, coiling around them with biting chills. Shadows flickered at the edges of the clearing, menacing silhouettes coalescing into forms. Sarah's heart raced as the figures began to emerge from the depths, their features grotesque and distorted. Each face echoed those they had encountered, taunting, trapped souls, their eyes hollow and pleading. "We have to confront it, Jake," Sarah said fiercely, feeling the weight of their fear, desperation intertwining like a vine around her heart. "This isn't just about survival. We need to break the curse before it claims us too." "But how?" Jake trembled, terror licking at him like flames. "Look at them." She turned, looking into the swirling faces of lost spirits. "Maybe they're the key." The thought took root in her mind. They still want help. If we can find out what binds them here, perhaps they'll guide us out. Or we can set them free. But what if we lose ourselves in the process? Jake whispered, eyes wide with panic. Gripping his hand tightly, she steadied herself. "We won't. We face them together." Focusing her energy, she took a breath. "I will not abandon you. Let their pain become our strength." As they stepped forward, the shadows surged closer, beckoning, whispering promises of power in exchange for their souls. Join us," their voices sang like twisted lullabies, wrapping around Sarah, trying to drag her back into despair. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "You do not own us." Jake's grip tightened as they pressed on through the shadows, the weight of fear mingling with courage. The figures stalled, their anguished faces flashing with fleeting hope. "Release us and we shall guide you." They all seemed to echo, desperation layering their chorus. "Set us free from our eternal torment." Sarah's heart raced as she thought of a plan, of what they must do. "What binds you?" she shouted, commanding the shadows to listen. "What keeps you trapped in this dark? We can help but you must tell us." A figure stepped forward, its face familiar yet lost, a woman with sunken eyes and outstretched hands. "The sins of those who came before," her voice echoed, flat and broken. "They forsook us, lured into the darkness. We became their price. Then we will confront their sins." Sarah shouted, feeling the warmth of defiance bloom within her. "And we will find a way to release you, but you must trust us." The spirits murmured, their ethereal forms flickering with uncertainty. "Rage against the dark that binds us, and you may yet find freedom." With renewed vigor, Sarah and Jake channeled their fear into determination. Together, they began to speak the names of their ancestors, the lost, the forgotten, those who had fueled the curse with their fear and greed. The names echoed into the ether, and the shadows began to shift, writhing in agony as if a great weight began to lift. The forest trembled, light flickered, and darkness surged. "Help us!" The shadows screamed, voices filled with both pain and hope. "Stay strong," Sarah urged, heart pounding as they fought to maintain their ground. The forest resonated beneath their feet, a low rumble like impending thunder. With each name, with each echo of truth, the shadows wavered and shrank away, their voices growing softer until only the whispers remained soft and forgiving. Suddenly, a blinding light swept through the grove, illuminating the clearing. As a wave of warmth washed over them, the spirits began to dissolve into shimmering motes, rising skyward free from their earthly prison like fireflies into the night. "Thank you." Their collective whisper faded into the wind, leaving only a tranquil silence behind. Did we win?" Jake blinked in astonishment, his earlier terror replaced with something lighter. "I think we did, sweetheart," Sarah smiled, hope trickling back into her heart. They glanced around, the forest now less foreboding than before, the darkness lifted, the shadows retreating like fleeting memories, yet, as they stood there, the air still felt charged, the forest alive. Leaving this place wouldn't be as simple as walking away. The past still resonated through the trees, memories stamped into the very soil, but they had taken the first step towards breaking the cycle. Together, they turned away from the clearing, weaving through branches toward the distant glow of the town lights. With every step, they felt lighter, less burdened by what had happened. The cabin, the darkness, all of it would remain in whispers behind them. They were free now, and together they could face whatever lay ahead. This wasn't just an end, but a powerful new beginning. "Mom," Jake said, breaking the silence, "do you think it'll be okay now?" With renewed certainty in her voice, she responded, "We'll carry the strength of those we've freed with us. They won't be forgotten, and neither will we." As they moved deeper into the night, a sense of togetherness enveloped them. A quiet promise danced in the air, they were now the guardians of their story, woven into the rich tapestry of lives touched by shadows. They made their way toward the light, two souls forever changed yet unbound by the roots of the past, and as dawn broke, the world felt reborn, twisted tales transformed into whispers of hope. So, are you ready for the next chapter? Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that await. Smash that like button now, your support fuels this journey through darkness. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this adventure with at least 5 friends who need to hear this amazing story. True fans know the importance of supporting our channel. Let us keep the fire burning together.